lessons from up north. That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, just when you think that CNN can't sink lower, they surprise you. They are so lazy, so unimaginative, and so bereft of fresh thinking that now they just cut and paste their scripts about January 6th and apply them to any protest or rally against left-wing government overreach. Now, case in point is their coverage of Canada's expanding Freedom Convoy. Now, note the reporter's exasperated tone and pained expressions.
State of emergency in place in Ottawa, where the police chief says COVID protests are a, quote, nationwide insurrection driven by madness.
Just think of the language. I know it sounds familiar to you, right? A threat to democracy, an insurrection, sedition. Things have quieted down a bit, but that does not take away from the basic truck-in, right? The sit-in. Sitting senators, at least one sitting governor are supporting these people from the United States. The police chief has a message for them. Don't. You are supporting unlawful behavior.
Well, that's the same way, basically, they covered the BLM protests, right?
This is Atlanta, a bit of the outrage expressed across the country. This is right outside of CNN World Headquarters.
They broke the glass that was right in front.
It's not the main entrance of the CNN building.
They didn't break the main entrance, just some of the glass. It was like their building in Atlanta. Now you get the point. The regime media knows exactly what's happening in Canada, and it scares the heck out of them. Now, it's not because they think the truckers or the trucker supporters are terrorists. They know they're not. But they're scared because if usually mild-mannered Canadians have figured things out that most of what their governments did to fight COVID was insanely destructive, then how can liberals here possibly think for 1 second that they're going to keep this COVID theater going on in the United States for much longer? So back to CNN. Rather than seriously reporting on these unprecedented grassroots protests, the CNN and the backbenchers denigrate or dismiss them. I'm telling you tonight, this is a huge mistake. People and viewers follow strength and courage, not small men like Jeff Zucker or the dewy-faced Justin Trudeau, who, as far as we can tell, is still hiding in an undisclosed location tonight. For 2 weeks now, Canada has seen what happens to a supposedly free people when they're pushed to the brink. Out-of-touch provincial governments, drunk on their own power, thought that they could keep Canadians subdued with these COVID rules forever. But they were wrong. The situation in Canada is a preview of what would have happened here if we didn't have a strong populist movement that listens to America's working-class voters. In Canada, workers have a lot less hope than we have here, so they're turning to more radical actions. For years, Canada's mainline leaders, like our establishment here, frankly, did everything they could to help China at the expense of their own people. Then came woke ideology and condemnations of Canadian history and patriotism. Unlike here, where populists in the GOP were able to take over their party and offer an alternative governing approach, the Canadian Conservative Party was led by a limp-wristed moderate who tried to pull his party to the left. It's crazy. But let's review what happened in Canada just over the past few years. In June of 2020, BLM radicals took over Parliament Hill in Ottawa. Naturally, pretty boy Trudeau was there to take a knee. Then in Montreal, in August of 2020, leftists tore down and decapitated a statue of Canada's first Prime Minister. In July 2021, the Liberal mob cheered as they tore down statues of Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth II. So what has this all taught average Canadians? That their government is more concerned about heaping more and more restrictions and rules on the working class and sucking up to the wokesters than standing up to the radical left. And by hammering working-class Canadians while enabling and praising the leftists, those in charge were inviting a blow-up, and boy, have they gotten one. At least the Conservative Party at this point in Canada is looking for new leadership, though. The Canadian Liberal Party is stuck with its positively boosted cutie pie, who doesn't like other boys playing in his sandbox.
Mais il y a aussi des gens qui sont farouchement opposés à la vaccination.
Qui sont extrémistes.
Qui ne croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes aussi.
Have also chosen to not go anywhere near protests that have expressed hateful rhetoric. The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views do not represent the views of Canadians.
A small group of people? Doesn't he look like he's looking for like a Pilates class? Anyone have a good home teacher who can come? But it looks like Justin's strategy really did fail. Didn't calm things down at all. Look at the crowds. Now, I see these protests happening every other week for almost 18 months across Europe. In France, in Italy, and elsewhere, people are out there demanding their basic freedoms. And when I see it, I have to say, thank God for our red state governors. They started our own freedom convoys back in May of 2020 by pushing to open their states or never closing them in the first place. Now, it never made sense that kids in Florida had normal school experience for almost the entire pandemic, while New Yorker kids were masked and separated from each other. And I also think, thank God, we have a Republican Party that has almost entirely rejected its old guard. We're not the party of Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney, who wouldn't know how to fight for the average blue-collar worker in America if their lives depended on it. Conservatives in Canada did everything that Romney and Cheney wanted. They had a moderate leader named Erin O'Toole, who ran on a progressive platform in 2021. As the Washington Post noted, he ran as an explicit centrist, a man at pains to emphasize how he revised Conservative Party, pro-LGBT, pro-choice, pro-carbon tax, pro-immigrant, spend happy, against budget cuts, and so on. He was not your dad's Conservative Party. Well, it failed spectacularly. As a result, the Liberals were still able to cling to power in the 2021 election there. So many working-class Canadians saw how this all worked out, and they essentially, for at least now, they gave up on a political solution. And now Canada's problems are bigger than ever. But here, thankfully, things are different, and tens of millions of us see real reason for hope. It's a fact that the movement Trump began has already taken power in many states. School boards, man, they're looking over their shoulders now, aren't they? People are demanding more law enforcement, given the crime rates, and Hispanics are moving to the GOP in record numbers. We have an incredible new Hispanic voice later on in the show. You got to stick around for that. And even some blue states are starting to drop their mandates. So will we need our own trucker rally to end all of this insanity once and for all? I thought not, until Biden spoke through Psaki today.
Back on the mask mandate question in New Jersey and other states, the CDC is still recommending universal masking in schools.
That's correct, and that still remains our recommendation.
Just think, honking, really loud honking, may keep Joe from his usual 12 hours of sleep a night. And that's the angle.